So we've got these pretty big smooth shapes, which, as long as we're just coming up with the general shape of this sim, it's fine. But they're not really good enough on their own. They need to be broken up. Historically, we've used disturbance for this, and we're actually going to use it again now, but we're going to do it in a more interesting way. So come back into our sim over here, and we're going to deal with microsolvers now. And they get plugged into this advection little input here. So I'm going to make a disturb, gas disturb. I'm going to preemptively make a merge here, and then put that into here. The merge, of course, doesn't do anything until I put more microsolvers in, but there will be more, so look forward to that. Now, gas disturb on its own, we often just use it like this, with a regular continuous mode. Strength, whatever. But in this lesson, we're going to use rotational force. What's really awesome about rotational force is, as it says, instead of it adding energy into the system, instead of it pushing something in a direction, it will only rotate it. Meaning, if it doesn't have a speed already, if you rotate something that has no speed, it still has no speed. So this is only changing the velocity's direction, not saying you're going more strongly in this direction or you're going less strongly in this direction now, which will actually affect the overall energy of the system. In fact, if you look at the gas disturb help card, it'll say that the rotational force was kind of thought up or is best used with flame related stuff. So more than happy to oblige. So here we go. We can already see way more detail. Pretty sweet. Now, continuous is often a mode used to pretty great effect with gas disturb. Continuous is saying apply the effect kind of at the smallest possible level of the, per voxel. And we could just use continuous here and it'll look pretty good. I like the idea of using block base. I feel like you get a little bit more control, where you can control the size of the blocks, how rough they are. This will still ultimately also trickle down as you go down the octaves. So if the first block is 0.2 and you apply a noise at 0.2, but then you go down an octave to like 0.08 or whatever, it'll still get smaller and smaller and kind of be like continuous. But I do like the fact that I have a little bit more control. Sometimes, anyway. For the fire, that's how I'm kind of thinking about it, though. I'm thinking about grabbing blocks of the fire with my hand and then twisting it. And then once I twist that fire into some direction, it continues to expand and add heat and stuff. And so you get more little globules that give that kind of pyroclastic look that we want. So let's do a quick flip book of just the naive, not changing any of these values. So it's interesting. I mean, it's certainly more interesting than, what we've been doing, where we have these big blobby shapes. It's still essentially the same shape. It just has more detail on top of it. But this is too much. There is such a thing as too much. You find often with people, I think, that are new to this or they're just trying to go about it on their own, it's kind of like when you see somebody who is modeling like a human face, where there's this desire to keep adding more and more detail, like extreme detail. And it's like, well, sure, there's a lot of detail in here now, but it doesn't look good. And the comparison to the human face thing is that the more and more detail you put on that, the older the face looks. There's nothing wrong with that if that was your intention. But if it's not, there is such a thing as going overboard with this. So this is overboard. Strength 25, maybe that was just too high as a default. Let's go down to 10. If we go down to 10, I'm seeing like features now. This is what I want. I want blobs. I'm going to put more disturbances and we'll break it up even more. But I'm still kind of like trying to straddle the line between getting a lot of detail and just getting like smaller features. We had big features already with this. This is a large feature here. Now I have smaller features or smaller blobs. That's what I'm looking for right now. Just smaller blobs. I can get some of that back. I can increase the roughness. I could increase the max octave so it's going down and doing smaller voxels. And that's good. That'll get me even smaller little blobs and stuff, and you can kind of see that. I mean, it's still fairly similar, I think, but that's on the right track. And then sure, to get that grainy detail, I can still just use another gas disturb. So let's just make another one. This will be for everything else. We'll just make this be, we'll keep this one on continuous this time. And I'm already going to bring this down in strength to that. And, these microsolvers are being applied on the substeps too, which is another great reason to have substeps on. It will help us evolve our sim faster, especially in those important early frames where we don't want it to be like a smooth initial thing. We want it to be like breaking up pretty fast. So this is kind of be for everything. So I'm going to say gas disturb continuous for everything, smoke and for fire, everything. And this is going to be kind of just for, say, rotational block. Oops. I like how it tries to keep resimming this frame every time I change the name of this node. Rotational block flame. Something like that. I can even go to, like the disturbance shows up. We talked about this earlier, in earlier lessons, I mean, where it's allowed to, threshold range. You can see how the higher number actually comes first here. What it's doing is it's showing up in the areas around where things are happening. So if there is stuff going on, density, it should actually have zero effect. Only in the areas around it where there's nothing will you actually see the actual effect. So over here we have, I gotta go in here to see the visualization. So you can kind of see it. You can see that the disturbance is happening around the smoke. You can kind of see the edge here. If I turn off this density visualizer, now you can really see it. It's not actually applying the disturbance on the inside of the explosion. You might think that it is, but it's not. It's changing the velocity that the explosion is running into. And that's what's causing those features to form along the edge of it, which is important because we don't want to just tear up the whole thing. That said, I'd say for this flame one, we might as well have it be done in terms of flame. So I'm going to change the threshold field here to flame. That way, I mean, it's going to be more or less the same at first because everything is kind of flame at the beginning. But now you can see as the flame moves up, there's still density below it. But I'm only really interested in targeting the areas where there's flame for this. So that'll just be a pretty small difference. But just so you know, psychologically, that's going to be the difference between these two. Awesome. Let's run this whole thing out and see why this is actually still not going to look that great. It actually kind of looks nice in the beginning, but you'll see there's going to be some problems here.